Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Fast Keto. I'm thrilled to have Jonathan Shane on with us today. He is also known as the Keto Road, and this episode is all about bulimia recovery, body dysmorphia, and his personal journey and experience with that, and how he found relief and improvement with all of that through keto and through doing a keto and carnivore approach, and also a little bit digging into how he's been a bodybuilder, competitive bodybuilder and fitness competitor as well, and been doing that with keto. So a lot of really great topics we dig into today, and I really appreciate Jonathan for coming on and being really vulnerable and sharing and talking about his experience with that, especially that it's not really focused on or talked about as much when it comes to men. And I really appreciate him coming on and taking the time, and he shared so much great information about how serotonin is connected to body dysmorphia and how we can boost our serotonin levels in the body with different serotonin boosting foods, which we talk about at the end as well. And we talk about also how he eats in a day during his keto bodybuilding competition and prep, and what that kind of looks like at the beginning and the end. So really great episode, lots of interesting food for thought, and also just a really fun conversation. So hope you guys enjoy this episode today with Jonathan Shane. All right, Jonathan, thank you so much for being here today with us on Fast Keto. I'm thrilled that you could join us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on.
So for anyone who's not familiar with you and your story, maybe we could start off with a little bit of background.
Yeah, so my name's Jonathan Shane. I'm a full-time ketogenic nutrition coach and business owner. I grew up extremely overweight, did the generic dieting. I think I was 260 pounds when I was 14 years old, very big, obese child, a lot of emotional eating issues. And losing that weight and how that developed with like my relationships with people and bullying led to a lot of fears of gaining the weight back, and so that ended up developing some very extreme body dysmorphia, which eventually turned into bulimia. Struggled with that for many years. Found the ketogenic diet, and while the ketogenic diet didn't solve those issues, they definitely gave me a better neurological, hormonal, and just overall nutritional foundation to start addressing them and fighting them and overcoming them. And so I've been in recovery, which basically means I haven't relapsed on bulimia in 2 years. And now I live my life focused on bringing awareness to it and coaching people one-on-one on weight management and building sustainable relationships with food.
That's awesome. So how did you sort of first find keto?
That's a great question. So I was in one of my yo-yo dieting phases. I was one of those bro guys. I love to eat 3,000 calories, bulk up, for 4 weeks, gain a bunch of body fat, and then I'd cut down for 4 weeks and then bulk up and cut down. And I was in the middle of a cut, and I couldn't lose any more weight, obviously because my metabolism was just destroyed. But I was on Facebook, and a Brandon Carter video actually popped up, and I was like, oh, what's this keto thing? And then so I was reading his stuff, and then Drew Manning, a couple videos of his popped up. And this is in 2017, fall of 2017. So keto wasn't super hot yet, but these were the two people that talked about it more often than not. And so I gave it a try, and I broke through my weight loss plateau. And I had a cheat day, 4 weeks in, and I felt terrible. And then I said, maybe I just haven't done it long enough. So I kept doing keto. And then I had another cheat day, Christmas Eve of 2017. And I just woke up feeling terrible the next day. And after that one, I just told myself I'm never going back. And I haven't gone back since.
So have you been sort of a keto competitive bodybuilder for the last few years? Is that sort of, were you doing competitive bodybuilding before that?
No, not at all. So I've always been a fitness junkie, and I'm definitely an extreme. I've always been to quote unquote a balls to the walls kind of guy. When I decide to do something, I'm going all out. And so when I decided after Christmas that I was going to do keto strictly, I wanted to figure out how to build muscle on keto. So I YouTube searched bodybuilding on keto, and Keto Savage Robert Sykes was like his first KetoCon talk popped up, and I was like, oh wow, this dude's like jacked and shredded. This is crazy. So I messaged him. We emailed back and forth, and I picked a date, and I did my first bodybuilding prep and got on stage, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the process. I fell in love with the control it gave me with my food, and that kind of like that resilience it built in me. And so I just kept doing it. I went into an off season and started dealing with my eating disorders, because that has to be dealt with if you want to build quality muscle, and learning to love myself and all of that. Did that for a year and a half, and then I just finished my second competition, or my last competition prep, I should say. But the show got canceled because of the whole COVID thing. But I just finished that here recently, and yeah, it's been a crazy journey.
That's amazing. So yeah, I guess you can't really compare sort of bodybuilding competitively before keto to keto, because you started it after. But you started it and you've been doing it, and you're planning to continue for the next, I guess, when it's rescheduled?
So actually, no. So actually, I quit bodybuilding. I have transitioned into endurance training. I want to qualify for Boston. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. I find the whole like competitive bodybuilding world really interesting. I've been learning more and more about it. I think like just where I've personally been going with like researching protein more is like, I've been sort of learning more about how it's all done, and it's really fascinating. But you look at the diet of someone who's like in a prep, which I've been learning about. I should know more about it as a sport nutrition specialist, but I'm learning more and more about it now. But it's very interesting, and it's an extremely healthy diet. Like the way that people eat on it, it seems to be really, really healthy. So like a lot of prioritizing protein, keeping it low carb, like low fat, like really just like a lot of real food, not a lot of like snacking and stuff. How would you compare it to doing it like a keto version of it?
So I would definitely say that the keto version, especially for me, so understand, like, I think when it comes to the biggest issue when it comes to bodybuilding preps is really your relationship towards food, and how that can become very skewed, especially towards the end. And for somebody that has eating disorders, I'm much more sensitive to that aspect of it. And so I can say that like there have been times in my life when I was just a fitness junkie where I've like gotten a coach and like, oh yeah, I'm going to prep for a show. And like, I couldn't hack it for 2 weeks. Right. But keto, because I just had an addiction towards carbs. I liked binging and purging, and whether that was the legit throwing up or whether that was running on the treadmill for 3 hours, like that was just my life. Keto gave me the ability to control my food in a way that allowed me to do that. And, doing it Robert Sykes' way, especially at first, that higher fat ratio, lower protein, really gave me sustained hormones, and it really controlled my blood sugar. And it allowed me to, like I said, that's why, like, even though I'm not doing it anymore, in terms of like actual bodybuilding, I always have a great respect for it, because it really gave me my initial foundational control to be able to overcome my eating disorders. And so I would definitely say that the ketogenic version, one, you're going to have much better mental focus, mental clarity. Your hormones are going to stay way healthier. There's a point during a bodybuilding prep where it just gets unhealthy. Like there is a point where you're just doing unnatural things to obtain unnatural levels of body composition.
Right.
But keto definitely makes that latter part much more sustainable. And then the reverse diet, like slowly increasing calories to keep your metabolism healthy or get it healthy with minimizing fat gain, is so much more doable when you have controlled blood sugar levels, and it's so much more doable on a ketogenic diet because of the way that it helps optimize hormones. Like I think I just finished, I'm pretty much done with my reverse diet, and I'm pretty steady. I've put on probably about 9 pounds since my show day in the past 7 weeks, which is not bad. I know other people that have had even greater success in terms of weight gain, like 5 or 6 pounds, right? Whereas like someone that's carb based, they can put up to 30 pounds on their bodies within 8 weeks, because of one, it's just so much harder to control your urge to eat. hormones. It takes them longer to get optimized. And then you're just eating a bunch of like high sugar foods. And so there's just from a food aspect in general, the ketogenic diet is way more advanced, and I think it's way more efficient, especially for natural competitors. From a muscle standpoint, you're right. I never body built on carbs, but I've built a lot of muscle on keto. I think my off season, I put on 10 pounds of mass, and I have DEXAs to prove that. That's a lot of muscle mass for no carbs. For someone like, oh, you can't build like, well, I don't know. I ate a lot of steak and I ate no rice, and I got pretty strong. And so I definitely think that keto allows you to build muscle, and I think that it allows you to maintain it better, preserve it better. And then I think it allows you to control your food better, both during the prep and post prep. So I definitely think for a natural athlete that's thinking about doing it, the ketogenic way is definitely the best approach.
Awesome. Well, there's a few different terms I want to dig into a little bit more with you. So when you talk about your disordered eating in the past and bulimia, that's basically, from what I know of it, is like compensating and compensatory behavior centered around like a binge followed by compensating with, like you were saying, there's different forms of it, but like purging or like over exercising, like someone binging and then exercising for like 10 hours or something like that. And these like this compensating and this really difficult cycle to get out of. So I'm really, really happy for you that you found, improvement from that and recovery from that with real food. I've had a couple of other people on the show who've had similar stories, and it's just really cool to hear that, and that it's such a helpful like component of the process. But with regards to body dysmorphia, you mentioned that a little bit. So maybe for listeners, could you define what that is, and we can talk a little bit about the causes of it and then what you've learned about it?
I would love to. Yeah. So body dysmorphia is a disorder characterized as an obsession with a particular part of your body. Now, whether that's imaginary or minor, it's almost like OCD and depression, like had a child, and like that's like body dysmorphia. It's like this over compulsive focus on something that you have either manifested or you've made very major when it's not that big of a deal. And no part of the body is left untouched. Like it could be anything. It could be your forehead. It could be your arm. Like for me, it's my arms and my waist. If there are times in my life where I talked about this when on my KetoCon talk, there are times in my life where like my arms were very severely dysmorphic to me. And I would work out 7 days a week. I would do my arms, like it would get so bad some seasons of my life that like I would have a hard time grabbing water, like glasses of water, because my arms were so sore because I kept overtraining them, because I was obsessed with the size of them, even though they weren't tiny, but like to me, I would look down and I would see these noodles, and it was like this, it was real. Like it was real to me, even though everybody else didn't see it. And so body dysmorphia is when that negative self-image leads to this compulsive self-harm. And, it's kind of like, so not everybody with like anorexia, for example, has body dysmorphia, but most do. Like, most that, they say they look fat, you see someone and you obviously see someone that's under eating and is severely sick and needs help. But when they look in the mirror, they could very well visually be seeing like an overweight human being. And it's the way they visualize themselves. And I found that so body dysmorphia, what causes it? It can be childhood trauma. It can be nutrition. I really think it's a combination of the two, because mental manifestation of things is derived from neurological pathways. Bottom line. What I mean by that is like, for your thoughts to grow something, that thought has to have a foundation, and that foundation is generally stimulated by hormone balance. So, for instance, they say there's a lot of commonalities between body dysmorphia and depression. So much, in fact, though, so that body dysmorphia is often treated with SSRIs, right, which is like a serotonin dumping medication. And so what we see is that there's a correlation between low levels of serotonin and body dysmorphia. So it tends to be like, depending on the type of childhood trauma, the type of environment, and maybe some epigenetic factors, I'm sure, that low serotonin due to poor nutrition or hereditary reasons or for whatever, manifests into either depression, it can manifest into an anxiety disorder, or it can manifest into body dysmorphia. And then once it's kind of started, then the constant feeding of it is what turns it into this nasty self-harming disorder.
It's really interesting. I remember stumbling on this show years and years ago, and it was a show about like people who had taken plastic surgery to extremes. And there was this one guy on it, and he was like, my calves are so small. And he was like, I need to have bigger calves. And he went so far as to have like calf implants. And I remember just being like, wow, like it was crazy to see. I mean, but I understand, like, I mean, I'm not ashamed to say, like, I'll fixate on my thighs. Like, I'm like, it's that one like problem area, but what's the difference like between that and sort of like, because everyone has like parts of themselves that they wish were like a little more toned or like a little, a little different, or maybe bigger or smaller, whatever it is for each person. So like, I guess what's maybe the difference? Is there a difference there, like in terms of the fixation, or I don't know if it's kind of more of a clinical question, I guess.
No. So from my studies and from what I understand, and some anecdotal evidence as well, the difference really, like, everybody has a level of negative self-image. Like we all can be our harshest critics, which is why, like, with my KetoCon talk, the title is body dysmorphia and battling negative self-image, because negative self-image is paired with poor nutrition, and not addressing it can lead to body dysmorphia. So I would say that the difference between the two is, negative self-image is looking at something and being a critic and maybe speaking more harsh to yourself than you should. But when that elevates and evolves into a compulsive fixation that leads to self-harm, then I'm going to start dipping into that. Okay, you might have a mental disorder, right? Like, this might be getting a little extreme, because it's easy to harm yourself when you hate yourself, right? And so, like, when you have this fixation and, like, if this doesn't happen, like, I'm not worth anything, I'm not good, I don't love myself until I get X, Y, and Z, and I'm willing to put my body through dangerous situations to achieve it on a daily, yearly basis. I think that's really what separates the difference between a harsh critic and someone that has body dysmorphia, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what I love about it is understanding the connection with nutrition, because when you look at our hormones, like you were saying, our neurotransmitters are made out of peptides, of protein. If you're not getting the right nutrition, which, like, I know can happen so easily on certain diets, like restrictive diets, on vegetarian diets, on vegan diets, like, if you're not getting adequate protein that your body can absorb and utilize, or adequate healthy fats, and you're not able to make those neurotransmitters, and there's also, I know, connection with the gut and everything where a lot of those are made, that could have this like self-perpetuating cycle where, like, you don't know where one starts and the other ends, like, and it just perpetuates itself. And that leads to why so many people like yourself have like found so much relief with keto. Like, your body's got to be doing a better job at making that serotonin, the precursors for it, and all of that, right?
Oh, 100%. And I think, okay, and this is something that I'm really starting to like push more in on my platforms, is there's still a right way to do keto to help with these kind of things, and there's a wrong way to do keto to help with these kind of things. Because you can say you're doing keto, and while keto in general does tend to lower inflammation, it's going to help with the inflammation in the gut. It's probably going to help you absorb nutrients better. It's going to help with that biosynthesization of gut serotonin, which is going to help with inflammation. It's going to help with the ability for nutrients to pass the blood-brain barrier, etc. Right? it can still inhibit a lot of things if you're eating a lot of keto treats, if you're eating a copious amount of sugar alcohols. So like a couple things that I'll tell my clients when I'm working with them one-on-one, I'm like, hey, listen, like, one, we're going to go to total carbs. Like, you need to know what you're putting in your body, because even if it doesn't affect you calorically, it affects you hormonally. It affects you inflammatory wise. Like, it has effects. Don't think that things just pass through you, quote unquote. Like they impact things. And so we need to know what's going in. We need to have control of what's going in and understanding of that. And then so you've got all these sugar alcohols and all these, a lot of dairy products, which in some cases would be fine if it was raw dairy, because that has a lot of spore producing bacteria, which is great for the biosynthesization of gut serotonin. But a lot of people don't eat raw dairy. They eat a lot of crappy dairy because it's on keto and they're allowed to. And so I think that there's definitely some differences between the right way to do keto to handle, the brain health, and a wrong way to do keto to handle brain health, and just like focused on weight loss, which sucks because you have I get a lot of people are attracted to keto for weight loss, but a lot of those people have some form of body dysmorphia, negative self-image, and they're trying to get to the scale weight because they feel like once they get there, they're going to like themselves and they're going to accept themselves. And they don't understand that, they're going to lose all this body fat, but they're doing nothing else to handle or address the other health issues, like their hormonal levels and their brain functioning and the way they perceive themselves. And so when they get down to that scale weight after eating all the keto treats and everything daily and not optimizing their food intake and their food choices, they're still not happy. And then now you're in a roller coaster, right? They could just give up and gain all the weight back. They could just go through a huge season of mad depression. There's just so many things that come with not having an optimal ketogenic diet or carnivorous diet. So I definitely think that, like I said, there's a wrong way to do it to help with this, and there's a right way to do to help with this.
Yeah, I love that. And just in the same way that having poor nutrition is this negative self-perpetuating cycle, the opposite is true, right? When you start correcting that, doing keto, maybe you just start keto, maybe you're not doing it the perfect way at the beginning, but you're slowly reclaiming some of that, nourishment, and that's helping you slowly get better and feel better. And over time, you just are able to go to cleaner and cleaner versions of it and less of the keto treats and things. I always say I probably never would have started or even tried keto without all those sweeteners and things. I would have been if I saw how I eat today, I would have been there's no way I can do that. But they have a role. But yeah, I think it's such a great goal to have to get it to be as, optimal as possible over time. Now, I'm really curious what in your contest prep, so you just did your contest prep and you are preparing to go on stage, and then you found out it was canceled for this year. So what did that look like for you? How long was your prep? What was a day of eating like? What does that look like for someone who's doing this kind of competition with a keto diet?
Yeah. So the prep was 6 months long. I lost 52 pounds total. It was very aggressive.
All fat.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think I lost. I mean, towards the end, I think I lost some muscle because I was stuck in my house, and so all my weightlifting went away except for resistance bands, and that just happened to happen while I was at the lowest point of my prep calorically. So I definitely think some catabolic things happened, but I accept that. So basically it was 6 months long, lost 50 pounds or so.
That's a lot.
Really. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of weight, and I'm glad it's off, and I don't ever plan on gaining it back.
It's the weight of a canoe. I just know that because that's how much I lost too.
Yeah. But so the beginning of the prep was pretty high calories. You're talking 2,700. I was at 76% fat. And then as the prep continued, I lowered my calories. One thing I did different this prep from last prep was I entered in refeeds, caloric refeeds, not carb refeeds, but just higher calories very early on to try and keep, because I knew I was going to be a little bit more aggressive than last time. So I wanted to keep my metabolism and my thyroid as happy as I could. So refeeds went in a little early. But as I continued, I was slowly dropping my fat. I got all the way down to like 60% fat towards the end, which is a lot lower than I did last time. But one thing I've noticed is that the longer fat adapted you are, or the better fat adapted you are, the more protein you tend to tolerate without feeling those like mental effects. So I definitely was fine towards the end. I would say, so basically I'll give you 2 days of eating. I'll give you one at the beginning and one at the end because they did change quite drastically. So like at the beginning, I would have woken up, had a fatty coffee, and then after my workout, I would have had a half a keto brick or a whole keto brick. And then for dinner, probably a steak and maybe some asparagus. And so that was literally, that's what I ate most days. I think sometimes I would change it. I would have like, there's one thing I really liked making in the Instapot. It was like beef tongue and beef liver. And I would just I would do like 16 ounces a day. And so I would get like 7 pounds of it, throw it in the Instapot, cook it, and then just divide it between 7 containers and be done with it. And then towards the end of my prep, my protein was a lot higher. So most days my day would start with a whey protein shake and then grass-fed cottage cheese, and then some butter. And then I would have a quarter or half a keto brick post-workout. I like to keep in the keto brick in the diet. And then dinner would generally be some kind of veggie, whether it was zucchini or something, cooked in an acid and a fat. I'm really big on that. Like if you're going to cook veggies, they need to be paired with a fat and an acid so that you can, because it's not as nutrient dense as meat whatsoever. So if you're going to eat it, you want to get the most bang for your buck. And then that would usually be paired with, I had this organ blend because I went hunting and I killed this antelope and I harvested its organs and its meat and I made this organ blend. So it was like, I think it was muscle meat, Wagyu beef fat, the antelope's liver and the antelope's heart. And it was all ground into like this mixture. And so I would have like 16 ounces, maybe 8 ounces of that. And that would be like what a day would look like towards the end of my prep.
That's hardcore. So you were doing 3 meals basically with the bulletproof coffee. You weren't doing like the higher meal frequency that a lot of bodybuilders do with like 8, 9, 10 meals.
Yeah. So I would do 2, maybe 3 meals if I had the coffee. I'm not really big on multiple meals. So I found that 2 to 3 meals a day, I even do that right now, is sustainable for me. So, and again, this is bio-individuality. This is like having that self-awareness I think every human needs to have. 6, 7 meals a day for me wouldn't be sustainable because one, the meals are too small and I do have an appetite. But also like with my eating disorders, I know that many meals I would fixate on it. Like I would be waiting for that next meal and that's all I would think about, right? And then, but on the flip side, I've tried OMAD and OMAD does the exact same thing to me. All I do is think about that meal. And then once it comes, it's like, even when I was at 1,500 calories that the last couple of weeks of my prep, 1,500 calories is still quite a big meal. And so I would almost feel like I was binging, not just because like I wasn't eating like 3,000 or 4,000 calories in one sitting like I had, in years past, but the compulsive mindset towards that 1,500 calories was just so strong sometimes, and it made me uncomfortable. And I'm really big on self-care over self-harm, and so I constantly make decisions that make sure that I'm caring about my body, whether that weighs more towards my mental happiness or my physical nutrients. But I always try to make sure that I'm really emphasizing self-care. And so I found that the 2 to 3 meals a day definitely is what's sustainable for me and makes me happy.
I have a couple issues with OMAD, but my main one is that it really encourages like food fixation. Mm-hmm. It's like you could spend your whole day thinking about like that meal, or you could actually like do other things than just like thinking about food all day. And that's, like if you've ever dealt with food fixation or food addiction, you're like, and you've been free of it, you're like, you know how good it feels to not be thinking about food and just like get on with your life and like do other things. So I think that's really neat. And I when I watch these like YouTube videos of bikini pro like fitness competitions, and they're eating like every 2 hours, I'm like, that's like a full, like it's like a side job just to eating all the time, like even if like I couldn't imagine even doing 3. I'm so used to 2. But like I just don't know how they do it. Just it would be hard not to fixate on it if you have to like watch the clock and then make sure you get like a certain amount of protein at each meal. And so that's really interesting that you did it with 2 or 3. So and then you were gonna do the day sort of at the end, like is that in your peak week or?
Yeah, I was actually, wait, I'm sorry, can you rephrase that? Were you asking when I ate my meals or?
I think you said you were gonna do like a summary of a day at the beginning and then like more closer
Oh
to.
yeah, so closer to the end was that cottage cheese, that whey protein, and then that Oregon blend meat with, yeah, it was still, but it was only 2 meals a day because I didn't have the fatty coffee towards the end because I just didn't have the fats for it because my fats were quite a bit lower than they were at the beginning of the prep. But yeah, so I towards the end it was 2 meals a day, and I generally ate them in the morning. So like that was another thing I found that I really liked. For the context of the prep was I noticed if I woke up and I ate my first, I did my fasted cardio and then I ate my first meal and then I had my second meal by 11. It was nice for me because, you know, once my calories were done, I was done. And so it was so much easier not to compulsively think about the food because there was no more food. Like there was no more meal waiting, like, you know. Of course, I found myself going to bed like super early some nights so that I could wake up the next morning and eat. I'm like, I go to bed at like 7:45. My wife's like, why are you going to bed so early? And I'm like, because I'm hungry.
I tried the 2 meals a day earlier, like closing the eating window at like 3 or something. And it was a year ago because this research had come out with like the Salk Institute with Dr. Sachin Panda with the circadian rhythms. And he's like, this is optimal. And I tried it and it was really sad because like my husband would make dinner or he'd be like, okay, like, I guess I'm going to go get some dinner. And I'd be like, okay, bye. And just be sad. Like that's like our time, especially dinner is like to connect and stuff. So even though I prefer to have it like at 4 or 5, like early bird special time, and he prefers to have it later, we try to find like a medium. But yeah, you have to find something that works for you. But it is really nice if you do it for any reason. Like I'll do it accidentally now. Like if I eat a couple meals and then I'm just not like you actually start to check in and ask yourself more like, am I hungry right now? And you're like,
exactly.
Like, I think I'm good. Like, I think I'm really good. Like, I just would like some tea or something. And that's a nice thing too, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. So that's something that, you know, I didn't transfer from bodybuilding to marathon running for this reason. I did leave like one reason why I did stop bodybuilding though was that for me personally, while it gave me control over my food, it also made me start developing food anxiety and like the idea like I have to like everything has to be like gram for gram, you know, eat all my meals in the morning so I don't obsess about my food. But like in a sense, because I was thinking about that all, making sure I did that, I was still obsessing about the food. Like, so where bodybuilding really gave me my foundational place to learn to control my eating, I've kind of tried to transition at this period in my life to learning to have freedom with my eating. And marathon endurance training is so different than bodybuilding when it comes to nutrition. And it's really started to give me that freedom, you know, and like I had noticed the other day during my reverse diet, you know, I sat down with my wife and we had dinner together for the first time. And I mean like a year and a half. It had been a long time since I had just sat down and had dinner with her. So much so that like she'd been making this dish. It was like keto fried chicken for like the past 2 years and I had never eaten it. Not once have I ever had this meal. And I tried it and it was like so good. And like, we just had a great time. And I was like, it's crazy. I've been missing out on this for so long. It was just nice to have that freedom. And then like yesterday she made this salmon with like an avocado topping. And I tried a bite and it was delicious. But I looked at it. She's like, are you going to get some? And I'm like, no, I'm not hungry. And I walked off and like, it took me a second to resonate that what I just did. Like, I never, like, because, you know, I've been emotionally eating since I was a kid. You know, I used to like hide gigantic bags of chips on the side of my bed and eat them until I fall asleep, you know? And so like to be able to just consciously turn that switch off and go, I'm not hungry, I'm good, and walk off, crazy. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like being able to get to that point it's been a long road, but it's been so satisfying, and I've enjoyed maturing that aspect of my relationship with food 100%.
I love that you said that. We had dinner the other night, and like we were eating steak, and I always finish all of mine, and usually we'll finish some of my husband's too. And I got like sort of 3/4 done my steak, and I was like, I'm not hungry anymore. And Pete's like, okay. I'm like, no, like this is like a moment for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, not only am I not finishing mine, I'm not finishing yours, and I'm like fully satisfied, and I'm like in the moment, and I'm just like really aware of that. And it's very empowering, like feeling just like really satiated and like good. And I think it's such an indicator of like your body being super well nourished, and and also a lot of like mental health there too, right?
Oh yeah, like definitely, like obviously like making sure you're eating the right foods, because again, as you said that perfectly, like it's nutrients and mental, right? Self-awareness. Because while, you have to have self-awareness to be able to have those, like, be in that moment and be able to make that conscious decision of I'm full. Depending on what you're eating, that can be a lot harder or a lot easier, right? Like if you're eating some sugar-filled food, it can be a lot harder for you to think clearly and go, am I still really, especially from like a hunger hormone standpoint, satiation standpoint, your body might not feel satiated. And so you're kind of like, you ate as much as you ate yesterday, but this time it's just sugar filled or just not nutrient dense foods. And so now you're having like a hard time like addressing if you're hungry or not, because your body really doesn't know. Right. But if you're eating like a nutrient dense diet, lots of healthy animal meats, animal fats and proteins, properly cooked low carb vegetables, and you're eating those things, it gives you much more of a foundational, sorry, I just totally had a brain fart. It gives you much more of like a baseline to be able to go, okay, I'm full, right? Because now you can communicate with satiation hormones and signalings that can actually communicate properly. So I definitely agree with that 100%.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful. And so much about this whole lifestyle is so empowering. I want to talk a little bit about maintenance, since that's kind of more the phase you're in right now. And I see a lot of people, and I'm in maintenance mode myself. Like I've found that over the years, it's kind of a tricky place to be, because when you're losing, you're in that mode, and like you're gaining. I guess sometimes you're like not super aware or in denial or whatever. But when you're in maintenance mode, it's like you're very aware that like you are where you want to be, and there's no like the only goal is like staying the same. I found that for me, there's been a few things like I have to always have some kind of like little goal of improving something. Even though that's like, it's basically acknowledging that I'm like basically where I want to be, but there's like little things I want to tweak, like as opposed to like, I want to tone my legs a little bit more, this or that. But there's also been this really big psychological aspect to it of like, we were talking about at the beginning, like self-love, self-care, and like allowing yourself to achieve this result and like live in this body every day and like allow that for yourself. And there's like this whole psychology of self-sabotage, which I think really underpins a lot of that yo-yoing that so many of us experience. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and like what are maybe things that you've deliberately done to allow yourself to have the results that you have and like stay there and like love yourself more and all of that. Like any tips for listeners?
Ooh, man, that's a lot. That's a deep question. All right, let's dive in. So I definitely agree with you. I definitely think that the maintenance is one of those big parts of life that's much more mindset. And I don't think we as people, especially like in the diet space, in the keto space, in the fitness space, we don't really acknowledge how dogmatically ingrained it's been put in our brains to, like, you know, you're either losing weight or gaining weight, right? You're either growing or, and so like we feel like we have to constantly be like adding mass or like losing weight, right? There is no in between. And then for people that have gained a lot of weight, you know, they feel like all they have to do is, you know, that's the only focus. The only focus is losing weight. And I think depending on how you start your journey and your whys can really determine how you're going to go into maintenance, right? And how hard of a transition that's going to be for you. And what I mean by that is, like, so, you know, we do this at the Keto Road, we do this group coaching, and we had this topic of maintenance come up for a week, and we talked about how, you know, if you are focused on like just the scale number, once you hit that scale number, you're going to feel very lost, right?
Yeah.
There's, you know, you're going to feel lost. You're going to have like this post-diet blue. It's kind of like when you're bodybuilding and you don't have a goal after the show, you get like these post-show blues, and it's really hard to get out of. The same thing happens with normal human beings. You know, we get done losing weight and it's like, oh, well, now what, right? Like, I didn't work on any other aspect of my life. I have a good friend. His name is Mike Gorman. Gormy Goes Keto. He's a great guy. So he talks about, you know, his life. He lost 300 pounds, and then he only focused on the scale. And so once he hit that, he didn't know what to do, and he gained all the weight back in like 3-4 months, like 300 pounds, yeah, it's crazy. But now he lost it again. He started working with me as a coach. I started coaching him, and we started working on not just, oh, okay, I get you have a scale goal, but what's your relationship with food look like? Who do you want to be at the end of this, right? What's your why? Because I think that we have to ask those deeper questions. Like, and I understand, like, at first when you want to lose weight, you know, generally it might be because of a health scare or whatever. And so you're like, oh, you know, I'm gung-ho, but you're only leaning on motivation. And there's a multitude of reasons that can really inhibit you during your journey. But really, like, you need to ask yourself why. Like, why do you want to lose weight? Well, I want to lose weight because I want to be thinner. Why? Well, because I want to fit into good clothes. Okay, great. That's a good one. Like, you want to shop at normal areas. You want to feel comfortable in your clothes. Okay, why do you want to lose weight? Well, because I want to be able to move around more. Why? Well, because I want to be able to run with my grandkids. Boom. That's a great why, right? So now that the scale weight's there and we've lost this weight, now understand that your goal's still not met. Like that goal is going to be continuing. You want to be able to run with your grandchildren for years to come, not just because not just because you weigh less. So now let's start working on other things. Like, let's work on how to sustain your weight. Let's work on maybe some more activity. Let's get those knees strong. Let's work on ligament strength. Let's work on proper nutrition to make sure that as you're losing weight, your body's healing, and it's going to get to that place where you can meet this goal and sustain this goal and possibly even grow this goal. You might go from running around with the grandkids to going to playing football with the children. Like, you don't know what's capable if you don't, really dig deeper and ask those deeper whys. And so I think that's the first one, is like really having a deeper why to why, you're doing what you're doing. I think that really sets you up for success going into maintenance. And while you're at maintenance, while you're there, I think that it's important to understand that, like, you don't have to have a particular, like, body composition goal. Like, that doesn't have to be a goal, right? Like, that's something I've learned. That's something that's very new to me, and I've really learned to love endurance training. Like, I picked it up like 6 weeks ago, and it's already like, I like it way more than strength training. I still strength train, but I like running. Like, running is my number one. And it's really allowed me freedom because, like, my visuals they're not something that are my focus right now. Like, I'm doing it wrong. Like, I think every guy wants abs because of, we've been told that, like, abs are like the pinnacle of, like, male health. But I think that for me, like, it's not really my priority. My priority is to run faster and to run better and to give my body the fuel it needs to be able to achieve that goal. And so I would even encourage, once you hit maintenance, unless you're like bodybuilding or doing something really like some kind of extreme sport that requires some more visual focus, maybe choose some goals that are outside of like physical composition. Like, do you want to be able to run 5 miles straight? Do you want to be able to, play basketball with your kids? Do you want to be able to, I don't know, run a marathon, right? So like finding things that can still be activity and performance based, but finding goals outside of like body composition are huge, because I think that, and while it's warranted while we're trying to lose weight or we are bodybuilding or something, we become very micro focused on our visuals in our body. And there's so much more to life than that, right? There's your hormones, there's your overall health, there's your happiness and your view towards yourself. Maybe your goal can just be being at maintenance and, like you said, loving yourself where you're at. Maybe that can be your goal for the next year. Maybe 2021 is the year of self-love. And one piece of advice I give to people is like graciously talking to yourself. So maybe your goal can be every day this year, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to say something nice to myself. I'm going to say, I am amazing. Because like something that I've pointed out before is something that like every time I say it, I think about it. It still blows my mind. When's the last time, not out of cockiness, but out of understanding of who you are as a human being, as a creature, your biological functioning, how amazing that is, have you just told yourself, I'm a really amazing thing. I'm an amazing creature. Like, when have you told yourself that genuinely, right? So like, that's something that's like, hey, like that's a real simple one. And the more you mean it, the more you're going to act like it, right? You're going to act like you're amazing, and not because you're this rich guy, not because you're a billionaire, but because you understand who you are, you understand where your body's come from, you understand what it's capable of, and you understand just the pure fact that your body is pretty amazing. It can do a lot of amazing things if it's fed right and it's cared for. And so like, that's a very simple goal at maintenance. I think that can keep us going. So I definitely think that humans are ambitious innately, and due to like years of like sitting on the couch or years of eating crappy food or years of just like telling ourselves we're not worth anything, we kind of cloud that innate want to be better, to grow. But I think innately all humans are ambitious and we all want more of something. And so I think just turning that focus from food and obviously focusing on weight loss, and then once the weight loss is done, like pointing that not back towards food but back towards some other kind of goal and pursuing that, I think is really important and healthy. I don't think anybody should stay stagnant. I think maintenance from a nutritional standpoint, for it to be maintainable, you have to have another type of goal, because if not, you're going to find something else to focus on. And if you don't direct it towards something positive, it's very easy for us to direct it towards something negative, and we can put ourselves back in a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I love that. I love all that you shared there, and setting different kinds of goals, especially. I can tell that you have been building, like, just in the way you're speaking, that you have love for yourself. And I know, like, one thing that's helped me is like doing affirmations, and like you said, appreciating things about yourself, and not in a boastful way, but just like, sometimes just the best vibe you can be in is like writing down like 10 things that you like about yourself. And it's harder to do than you think sometimes.
Yes.
And you can like get on a roll with it. And especially if it's things about yourself that are not really like, I don't know, not boastful, like just more things that you like about not how you look or how much you make or whatever, just things about your heart and all that. Like, it can really build and grow. And that's one thing I know that's really helped me, is like writing lists of appreciation and doing affirmations about like, I'm like allowing in the good and allowing this in for me. And so much of it goes, I think, back to like believing that you deserve and that you're worthy of like all your goals and aspirations too. Like, I don't know if you did any like journaling or affirmations or any like meditation or things like that you recommend to people when they're maybe in that darker place and they're like wanting to learn to love themselves and appreciate themselves, like things that can help them to like get out of it or slowly progress towards more self-love.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that everybody needs to have, I think this is a key one. Everybody needs to have time set aside in the mornings for themselves. For me, like, one thing that really helped develop my self-care, my self-love, is my faith, right? So I'm a Christian. I became a Christian when I was 16. So after I developed my bulimia, my eating disorders, and, understanding the way that, obviously what God did for us through, sacrifice of his son, and like understanding the worth that represents that God has towards me as his created creature really has helped build me up, right? Because that's something I can remind myself of every day. It's like, hey, I might be in a bad place today. I might not like who I am in this moment, but my God loves me, and I can lean on that, in those moments. And so that's something that's helped me. And so I really, and I have time every morning to revisit that and revisit who I am as a person. And I think also from a more internal standpoint, like reminding yourself of, you said these little affirmations. I think that's great. Like one thing I always tell myself when I'm having because I still have bad episodes. Like if I go a couple days without like a lot of like some fermented foods, like let's say that like I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just having a stressful week and I'm not perfect. And I do have a couple bites of keto ice cream and like my nutrition does kind of lack for a couple days. I feel it mentally. I get a little bit more depressive. And on those really bad days, like I still try to remember, hey, you're breathing right now. Like always remember that you are taking in oxygen right now, and no one said that you deserve it or anything. You're getting it, and your body is capable of using it to fuel you. Like I try to think of the very minute things that no one ever thinks about, right? Like something in the Bible, it says, whether you eat or drink, do for the glory of God. And I think that can be handled, from not a religious aspect, just so practically to anybody, is like, the minute things, being grateful for the little details can be so powerful in our lives. And I think often we don't even look at those little things, and that goes back to, if you are having a bad day, if you're like watching this and you've tried some of this or you've never tried it, let me encourage you that like, it's not going to be easy. Like, it's not easy. There are days that like you tell yourself something nice and nothing happens. And I don't want you to listen to what I'm saying and go, oh, so if I just start talking nice to myself, I'm going to learn to love myself. It's taken me 2 years to get to where I'm at, and I still have bad days, right? It's about acknowledging that even in those bad moments, you're still worth talking nice to, and encouraging that and growing in that. Something I brought up in another conversation was, again, another Bible scripture. I like using them. There's one from the book of Proverbs. It's Proverbs 16:24. King Solomon was known as this really wise man, and he says that sweet is the taste of honeycomb. It's good for the body and good for the soul. And gracious words are like honeycomb, right? And something I point to is like, honeycomb is sweet. You eat some, you want more and more, but if you've never had it, you never know how good it is. So let's like take that back to the analogy he was making, right? So like gracious words are like honeycomb. Gracious words are sweet and they taste good. And once you start doing them, you want more of them. But if you've never tasted it, if you've never said, I am amazing, you really don't know how good it is. And so my encouragement at first is just to start, but understand it's not going to be easy. There are going to be hard days, but compound effect over time, you will start to see that you make decisions more and more based on self-care over self-harm. You make more decisions either nutritionally or friendship-wise, relationally. Like all those start to really mature towards and surrounding the self-care that you're developing for yourself.
Yes, I love all of that. And those are amazing Proverbs and so many beautiful reminders in there. And it made me think about like just giving yourself a compliment. When you look in the mirror, like a lot of us look in the mirror at our bodies, like wake up in the morning and judge, like, how's everything looking? And one of my friends in the keto space, she had written something about like giving herself give yourself a compliment when you look in the mirror in the morning. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, it's just, you always look and you're looking for like, what, how's this, how's that? But then taking a nanosecond in that to be like, I don't know, like your hair looks like, or just something, it sounds so silly, but I was like, that's powerful. Like then you're totally turning around that like mirror assessment that we all do into something like a positive thing that could like build on your self-esteem and confidence. And I think those things are really powerful, like more powerful than we probably acknowledge.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's actually funny you bring up the mirror. So one of the big symptoms of body dysmorphia, probably the one that I suffer from the most, is compulsive like mirror looking. Like, so like something, and I still do it to this day, ever since I developed it when I was like 15, like it doesn't matter where I'm at. I could be in academy, I could be at Walmart, I could be at my friend's house. But if I get a chance where I think no one's looking and I see a mirror, I will lift up my shirt and I will grab some fat on my stomach and go, why are you there? Like it's compulsive. It's really bad. And like, so like, it's funny that you bring up mirror affirmation, because like one thing that I really try to do is consciously, like when I wake up in the morning, I consciously do not lift up my shirt. Like I look in the mirror and I say, hey man, you slept good. You ready you're going to kill today. And I move on. Right. And I try to, when I walk past the mirror and like, I know it's coming, like I compulsively want to do what I do, but like, I try to walk past it and tell myself something nice about myself instead. And like, and I don't look at it. Right. So, it's just, you brought up the mirror thing and I'm like, yeah, man, that's something I struggle with a lot. Even to this day, it's something I can be really bad about. Like when I have a really bad day, I'll like literally get up from my office chair and go look in the mirror, lift up my shirt, go ew, and then go sit back down. Like it can get bad. So like constantly working on that self-love and realizing that like, I don't have to be super shredded to be healthy. Like what is health? I'm sorry, I'm about to go on a rant.
No, yeah. I totally get it. And I have actually wondered if like sometimes fixating on like a certain part of the body or something, because I know so many of us who do that. Like I've sometimes wondered, like, is that a coping mechanism for stress where it's like you're feeling stress about other things that you can't really like touch or like sort of materialize. And so if you like materialize it as a problem on the body, like a spot problem that you're like, here it is, I can touch it. And then I have like a strategy or something that can like solve it. And so you're like actively solving that. And it like eases like the stress of the other stuff like that's actually nagging you, that's actually bothering you, the stuff that you're like not dealing with or whatever.
You just jaw dropped me. I just blew my mind. I just made a connection. So like, I'm constantly trying to make connections so that I can, because I don't believe you, I believe failing is when you give up, right? But I do believe we constantly learn, right? And we learn from the scratches we get on our knees when we fall. And so like the other day, probably like, I think last week sometime, maybe like last Tuesday, I had a really bad episode. I was getting up from my office chair, talking really bad to myself. And I was using all of my coping mechanisms. Like I was talking good to myself. I was writing things down. I was looking at, my accomplishments, and I was like, speaking nicely to myself and doing all the things I've learned to do to help fight it, but it was bad. And I couldn't figure out what triggered it. And obviously I went and ate a bunch of sauerkraut, and I'm like, okay, I gotta feed my guy. I gotta figure this out. And one of my friends was like, it's probably just your stress from speaking at, because my KetoCon speech was like 3 days ahead. So like I had like 48 hours before I talked, or 72 hours. And he was like, I think it's just your stress from like getting ready for that, because it's a big deal to you and it's manifesting. And so like, I was like, yeah, maybe. But like, you just connected that from him. Like, that's crazy. So like, nothing was wrong, but I was stressed about something I had no control over, the stress. And so I was finding something to fixate on, which is for me. Yeah. And for me, because my body dysmorphia is just something I can always go back to because it's there waiting like a evil demon. I went back to it, so like, that's crazy. You just blew my mind. I never made that connection. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're so welcome. Like it definitely like reaffirms that thought for me too, just like wondering about it. And it just goes back to the idea of self-care, of exploring self-care as like taking care of the stuff that you need to do and like facing and dealing with stuff so that you don't get stressed out and then you don't try to like manifest it in a way that you can control the stress in a way. But just to close things out, let's talk about serotonin boosting foods. What are some of like the, serotonin boosting foods? Like you mentioned, sauerkraut is great for the gut. A lot of our neurotransmitters are synthesized there. So what are some of those?
Yeah. So basically I give people like 3 general, if you really want to like, if you're on keto or not, and you really want to like take your nutrition to that next step, when it comes to like creating good like serotonin production in the gut, the brain. So you need a couple things, right? You need vitamin D, you need tryptophan, you need vitamin B6, you need spore-producing bacteria, and you need niacin. So there are some commonalities between brain and gut serotonin, but there are some differences. Like, for instance, spore-producing bacteria is for the biosynthesization of serotonin in the gut. Your body's not going to let bacteria into your brain. So obviously, your body's not going to use it to make serotonin in the brain. But so I tell people, one serving at least a day, 1 to 2 servings, 4-ounce servings of some kind of red meat or animal protein, because you need the tryptophan. If you are, and there's been a lot of correlation between plant-based diets and depression long term, and that's because that lack of amino acid profile. And tryptophan is the number one foundational piece for serotonin production. So 1 to 2 servings of red meat or some kind of animal protein a day, preferably beef or, like I said, some kind of red meat, but chicken and turkey and those
have
would
a
be
lot,
fine.
right?
Yeah, turkey does have a lot of tryptophan. And then the second thing is I do 2 to 4 servings of fermented foods or cultured foods. So whether that be sauerkraut, kimchi, if you're carnivore risk, you could do raw dairy or kefir. And then, or yogurt, plain Greek yogurt has plenty of cultures in it. Or if like you're real strict carnivore, don't think you can't get away with it. You could do like fermented fish or like pickled beef or, like corned beef. If it's done homemade, can actually have quite a bit of bacteria built up in the juices that flow around it. So like drinking that. And so there's definitely ways to do it no matter what diet you're on, but definitely making sure I found 2 to 4 depending on tolerance. Some people, depending on, because everybody's microbiome is so individualized, and they're so like they're all their own different like little cities, and so depending on who you are, I'd play with it. I'd start with 2 servings, then go to 4. If you go to 4 a week and you start to notice that you're gassy or bloated, that might be too much for you. It might be overriding your bacteria, so maybe cut that down to only 2 a week. And then I think the third one for me, honestly, is hydration. Like that's a big one. Like, because if you're not, so understand that like, you have all these vitamins and minerals, right? And these cofactors that are going to help allow all these things to happen, all these proteins. But like, if you're not properly hydrated, your cells aren't properly hydrated, they're not going to function. And so for all that nutrients to come in and be properly utilized, you have to be hydrated. And just too often people drink a bunch of diet sodas and all this stuff, and they don't ever get enough water. So again, just to like recap, I think it's, 1 to 2 servings of animal proteins a day, minimum. 2 to 4 servings of fermented or pickled or cultured foods a week, and then making sure you stay hydrated. So at least, I would say at least over 60 ounces of water a day, minimum. And for people that are athletic, over 80. But yeah, I've noticed from things that I've read in studies to anecdotal evidence, I found that those things work best for me. And don't think that it doesn't matter. Like, there's a study that I really love. It's about mice and how they took spore-producing bacteria away from their guts, and their serotonin production in the gut went down 80%.
Wow.
80%. And so don't think, you need those kind of bacterias, and they are best produced from, you get them very strongly from like fermented food. Like sauerkraut has a lot of it. Raw dairy is probably the biggest powerhouse. And it's funny, I'm not trying to get on a tangent, I know we're about to close, but like there's a correlation between our consumption of raw dairy going down and our anxiety disorders and depression disorders going up. There's a correlation between the two.
Really? That surprised me. I know I crave those foods. Like I crave like that sour yogurt. I crave like sauerkraut, like those sour tasting foods.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's like because of that desire, like your gut needs those foods, those fermented foods. And they're so important. But yeah, that's really, really great. I love kefir myself. And like that kind of yogurt and sauerkraut, we eat a lot of it here. People eat those foods like very, very commonly over in like in Czech. They eat it like maybe once a day or like multiple times a week. But it seems like in North America, you kind of have to like go out of your way a little bit more. Like you don't really see it at restaurants or things. But yeah, super important. And I love that you mentioned hydration, because I think that's one thing. Like we hear it all the time. I heard it for years, but then when I got into keto, I started questioning everything, even like drinking lots and lots of water. I was like, well, maybe that was wrong too, and then recently started upping my water. And I've seen a huge difference, getting it back up to those high levels. So I think it's cool that there's a connection there too with the serotonin and just like neurotransmitters and feeling good.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, hydration is huge. I notice it too. Like my energy is a lot more streamlined when I'm properly hydrated. Like I do notice like everything else can be the same, but if I don't drink enough water that day, my energy dips towards the end of the day, and I'm like, I did not drink enough. Like I'm able to connect those dots now. So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all this great information. Where can people find you online, find like your different feeds, like your Facebook group, your programs, like all of that? Where can people follow your posts?
Yeah, so if you're interested in knowing more about like coaching or blog nutrition like stuff, www.theketoroad.com is that platform. If you just want to like DM me or like follow my journey or be inspired or motivated, however, I can do that for you. Instagram is a big platform of mine, at the Keto Road. TikTok is something that I really like doing, at the Keto Road. It's my biggest platform. I'm a goofball on there, so if you don't like goofy stuff, I wouldn't. But and then Facebook / the Keto Road. So all three of those, you can message me, DM me anytime. I don't bite.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing, a lot of personal stuff. It's so helpful for other people, to hear stories like yours, and just to be able to, be brave enough to open up and share like things that are not easy to talk about. Like it helps people more than I think you probably realize. So thank you so much for coming on and being so open and sharing so much great information about serotonin and the connection with dysmorphia. I think it's really important information. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Of course. Yeah, no, and thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's important to be vulnerable, because I remember when I was in my bad spot, and I wish somebody would have spoken up. I wish a man would have spoken up and said, hey, this isn't normal. Like, you don't have to just man up and swallow this. Like, you should talk about this. And so, yeah, I'm happy to do it. And I really do appreciate being invited to come on and being able to talk with you.
Awesome. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into the episode. Really loved the episode today and hope you guys got a lot out of it. And if you know someone that you think would benefit from hearing Jonathan's story and experience with bulimia, with dysmorphia, with keto and healing, with keto and carnivore, be sure to send them the episode to check out. And be sure to also comment anything that you found insightful or interesting. We'd love to hear any insights or takeaways that you had from the episode. Now, if you want to check out keto with me as your coach and guide, you can go to ketogenicgirl.com. It's www.ketogenicgirl.com, and head over there. You can see all of my meal plans, and they all come with my support and guidance in our members coaching group. And I would love to have you join and be a part of it and talk about the results that you want to get. If you've been, not getting the results that you want to see, I am here to help you get there. I also have, in addition to that, private coaching packages. Those are all at Ketogenic Girl as well. If you want me to take a look at your individual lifestyle, your food intake, your exercise, figure out a plan to get your results and do a custom program, I can do that as well in the VIP coaching. So all of that is at ketogenicgirl.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, for watching, for liking and subscribing to this video. And I'm wishing you all a fat-filled rest of your day and sending you lots of love.